going to talk about one of the biggest changes to the close range meta that I haven't really seen a lot of people talk about, and that is that headshots don't really matter anymore, on top of a bunch of other things as we get into the close range meta. So when we go to True Game Data's site, they have the damage value section, and we have the max armor damage, which was replaced. Now it basically applies to the entire body, and initially you might think that this damage profile for the Lockman sub is bugged, but it is in fact not bugged. What happened before is there were damage values of 42 and sometimes even higher in different weapons depending on what we talk about. Then they're essentially clamped down. They're no longer 42. They're locked down at 30. And I don't know if you guys can see that on the screen if it's clear enough, but you can see that the headshot is the same as the neck shot, same as the toe shot with the leg shot. So what we're looking at there is no matter where you're shooting at someone in the first damage range, headshots will not matter. Everywhere is the exact same damage profile, which is pretty important. Even when we go to this next one, headshots do matter, but not quite as much as they were before. Because of this change, you're going to get more consistent TTK. In close range, you always tend to get better TTKs that are more consistent with the practical TTKs that we'll take a look at, because at long range, you're going to be tending to miss more shots. If the target is point blank in front of you, you should have a pretty high accuracy, 70, 80%. Obviously, if they're moving, even though the movement is not great in this game, it might drop a little bit, but it will always be more accurate than something you're trying to hit at 100 meters, and that's where the TTKs come into play. And because the SMGs got nerfed quite a bit as a result of this, shotguns have kind of closed the gap. So they are much more viable, but I generally don't like to cover them unless they're stupid broken, which at this moment, there are one or two that are really good, but none of them are stupid broken, and you still have to play a specific style of a shotgun player, which is kind of like hold an angle or barrel stuff. So in my last video, I was talking about TTKs, and a lot of people brought up, well, if the RAL is so good, why aren't we using that as the meta? It is very good TTK, but there's a lot of important factors when you're looking at stats, and my job is to essentially interpret all the data, see how it feels, and then basically give recommendations based off of that. Normally, what we're going to take a look at when it comes to close range meta is going to be the TTK. Is it fast? This is a very important one because it, like I said, the practical TTK and the theoretical TTK will be very close. But that's only one metric. That is a very important one though. At longer range, you can maybe have slower TTK, but if the gun doesn't move, it might be better option than the gun that has a very fast TTK and does kind of shake a little bit. The other important part that I have been talking about for quite a while is the damage per mag. We'll be taking a look at the damage per mag for these 5 weapons. You can kind of see they're all pretty in line. MX9 still kind of gets shafted. It had 45 round mag. It could compete with the meta, right? It would definitely be in the mix. But with the 32 round mag, it kind of gets checked off the list and not really all that viable outside of maybe solos. The other ones are all within a pretty good target there. And then you can see that the ISO 45 clearly comes out on top. So those two things are probably the most important. But on top of that, maybe the ADS speed. If a gun is super slow, then you're not really going to win a lot of gunfights unless you're pre-aiming, which SMGs you're kind of caught off guard. You have to react. So if you have a really slow aim down sight, you're hip firing at first, you're going to miss a ton of shots. Hip fire accuracy could be good if you're going to fire from the hip. Those could be like a trade-off. So it really depends on your play style and build, but generally ADS speed is going to be a little bit more important than hip fire, but obviously hip firing allows you to land a couple extra shots. So there's a little bit of trade-offs there. You got recoil, but that's mainly if it's bad. If the recoil is pretty manageable, doesn't really matter because up close, you shouldn't be able to miss that much. Reload speed. There's a lot of different stats that we would pay attention here. Bullet velocity. So right here, we can see that the fire rate, it gives a little bit more consistency with the ISO because it's a little bit more forgiving. We have mag size, which doesn't really matter because we already looked at the damage per mag and see how that correlates. The reload time. It has the fastest reload, the ISO 45. So even though it doesn't have the best damage per mag compared to like maybe the Vaznev, the Lockman, or even the Chimera, it will have a better reload, which could be important. If you go ahead and down someone, get a reload in, and then go ahead and try and thirst them or get the next down, that becomes an important part of the equation as well. And that's almost more important unless the mag size is just really huge and you never have to factor in reload time. ADS time, you can kind of see how they lay out, and these are fully built. The Lockman sub will be the fastest just because all the penalties that they changed, it actually ended up benefiting the Lockman the most. Movement speed, you would think would be a big deal, but in reality, it doesn't end up being that big a deal because this is more like walking speed, right? But when you actually go towards sprint speed, you can see the ISO ends up coming back up on top, but they're all relatively pretty close. But the ISO is going to be a favorite because you're going to get around a little bit faster, attack speed. So you can kind of see how those factors play into it. And like we mentioned, we can extrapolate these and kind of see the damage ranges. And overall, you can see kind of what does really well. This Chimera, if you're a fan of the Chimera, I really don't enjoy it. You can kind of see how that one builds out. And it has the best TTK at pretty much every range except for these first 9 meters. That one's dominated by the ISO. And then you got the FASNEV in here, which is good for like 3 meters from 9 meters to 11. That's only 2 meters. And then it goes back to the ISO. But the FASNEV has slightly better recoil, so you kind of got to factor those things in. I think any of these are going to be good options, especially if you enjoy the Chimera, you're good. FASNEV, maybe that fits more into a sniper support, maybe not, because it really depends on your recoil control. Lockman sub doesn't really have a place here. It does have a fast aim down sight, but you can see it doesn't do anything particularly well. Also, if you're looking to see what people use when money's on the line, you can tune into my live stream over on Twitch. Will be linked near the top of the description. So we'll go ahead and start off with the Chimera, which, like I said, I'm not necessarily a fan of. I've tried different builds. You can kind of see how that built out there. This one, pretty straightforward. I don't like the iron sight, so I'm using an optic. Typically, you wouldn't use that on an SMG, but if they have ugly iron sights, you need to use it. Otherwise, you're not going to enjoy the gun at all. So you could always swap that for like a stock or a rear grip if you want to go ahead and kind of modify that out for an attachment. But pretty straightforward build. Like I said, the Lockman sub isn't really like the TTK demon anymore. It does have a decent damage per mag, a little bit better mobility, and we can kind of see how that one is built out. It's primarily going to build for aim down sight. The recoil isn't crazy. It has great iron sights, which we've been accustomed to for a very long time. As you can see, not a ton of recoil on the bots there. So pretty straightforward in use of that. And this one still allows you to have a pretty good strafe speed in terms of mobility, aim down sight, all that good stuff. And now you got the FASNEV, which is great. This has been the comp weapon for a while. For whatever reason, I don't know why this is the barrel I have. A lot of people commented, how do I get that barrel? That's the stats on the barrel. So just look for whatever barrel has those stats. I'm not sure how I have this one, why I have this one. I saved a blueprint. I tried to make a new one. No matter what, that is the barrel I have, compared to this another one that's like 380 or 1 or something like that. I don't know why, but it's basically the same attachment renamed. You can kind of see how this one works out. Pretty much the same build we've been talking about for a while. Pretty easy to use, straightforward, has a good strafe, speed, good aim down sight. Like we saw, okay reload. But nothing compares to the ISO 45. We had the ISO Hemlock meta for like a good 3 months, maybe longer. And now with this one, we can kind of see how this one builds out. I'm trying something a little bit different. If you tried the build from my other video, you can go ahead and keep that one if you like it. I'm just experimenting with other things. That's kind of what you do with loadouts. You kind of theory craft, see what's going to work. I really like this build. I feel like it has no recoil. It has the fastest fire rate besides the Fennec, pretty much in the SMG category. You shoot straight, you're going to be able to hit your target, and it's pretty easy to use, even at medium range. So you can take advantage of that effective TTK. Let me know what you guys are enjoying. Appreciate the support. Thank you for watching as always. Have a great day.